Hello and welcome to another Seeds of Flourishing. So I'm going to have a bit of a Bowie ramble today. I was lucky enough, myself and my wife, we went to see the documentary that's just come out. I say that, on 16th of September in the US, so it felt like it had just been released. Well, we're now first week of October. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously, the title Moonage Daydream is taken from the 1972 song of the same name. We weren't lucky enough to see it at IMAX, and with retrospect, I'm thinking I wouldn't mind seeing it at an IMAX cinema. Yeah, it's not a conventional documentary, so it's not narrated. It's not a sort of interview, vox pop style, like, say, Decline of Western Civilization style thing. It's nothing like that. In fact, I'm trying to think of if I've ever seen a documentary in this style before. There was a good description down the bottom here. Where's it gone? In the reception area, where they're talking about bombastic, overstimulating, poignant, life-affirming and risk-taking summation. Yeah, so it's quite and I wouldn't say an assault on the senses, but it is a sensory experience when you go to see it. Now, and if you're looking for a sort of, timeline type documentary, then if you know the work already of Bowie, then you can sort of place it on a musical timeline. But if you were going in knowing nothing, then it would be purely a sensory experience. I don't know if you'd be able to string it all together. So that's the only caveat I have about it. I mean, I loved it. It was great just sitting there and letting it all wash over me and seeing all the archive clips and all the other stuff they introduced, like non-Bowie elements, which represented the sort of things that he was interested in as an artist. There was quite a lot of stuff I'd not seen before in depth. There were some nice clips of him on stage, which I'm not sure if I've seen some of those before. A lot of the stuff I had seen, but there were elements in there, and it was nice. Some of the clips were nice from films, and from there was a section where I think it was, I'm trying to think of against the timeline, but it must have been somewhere, would it have been before Under Pressure, somewhere around there, when he was clearly staying overseas. There was a lot of clips from that period which I'd not seen before. But I'd be interested to see if you went out and bought this and watched it on, say, at home, what the experience would be like. I think if you did that, you'd have to have a pretty nice large TV and a really good, what would you call it, like 5.1, some nice audio system to do it justice. That's myself. The touch I really liked on it was the mixes that they used in the film. There was a lot of really nice mixes which brought to the fore elements which you don't always appreciate. Like, I think it was in Sound and Vision. I think Sound and Vision's the one with the super complex bass line in it. They really brought that to the fore, and that really was amazing. Listening to that in the cinema, it was actually pretty loud in the cinema. And what I noticed is in the course of the film, the starting sections had almost like a chaotic feel to them, and then over the course of the film, the chaos sort of subsided. And I think that was, without knowing the ins and outs of the way the film was put together, it seemed to make sense with the way the narrative, generally the way it was going, in a sort of spiritual direction. It sort of made a lot of sense for it to sort of start off with chaos and end with a good deal of calm at the end. So the early, I would say, first 15 minutes of the film are quite a visual and auditory. Again, I don't like to use words like onslaught, but yeah, I think you know what I mean. Like it was, fairly intense, but enjoyably intense. So yeah, check it out. But if you're unsure, certainly, read a few reviews, see what you think. I think it wouldn't be for everybody's taste. And definitely if you're looking for a sort of introduction to the life of Bowie, then it's probably not the one to watch in terms of getting like a timeline approach. And I'm just going to talk about a few other things that are available out there now that might help you if you wanted a bit more of a sort of conventional introduction. Obviously with this, what helped was this access to the archive, because it was officially sanctioned by the estate. And Tony Visconti was involved as well, which was really cool. Lots of nice archive footage as well. If you're like a real big music fan, like both myself and my wife are, it's like spotting the famous musician. That was really cool. Like when they had various studio shots, film archives. I enjoyed like going, oh yeah, that's thinking to myself, that's so and so, or it might be. Someone would come up on screen. I'm thinking, oh, is that Andrew Bello or someone like that, or is that Brian Eno? Because they, obviously look a lot younger than they do now in a lot of the clips. In terms of other stuff, this is a really interesting documentary, Sound and Vision. Now, of course, a lot of these documentaries, because of when they were made, aren't necessarily slap bang up to date. But this was one I've watched, which is really good. There is a BBC 4 documentary just about Ziggy Stardust, which is narrated by Jarvis Cocker. Now, I always really like BBC 4 stuff, but I haven't seen this yet. But I imagine if it's up to the usual standard, then it should be really good. It looks like some sections have had to be deleted due to copyright issues, but I'm sure you might be able to track that down elsewhere. But it's called The Story of Ziggy Stardust, and it came out on BBC 4. And then a channel I've mentioned before, Trash Theory. All of the documentaries, and I like to think of them like that, because to me these are the same quality of like stuff you'd see on TV. I think this individual is incredibly talented, and definitely check out the channel if you haven't. And I did spot here, again, it's not one I've seen yet, there is one for Aladdin Sane, so yeah, I wouldn't mind watching that at some point. I imagine that should be really interesting. While we're on the subject of films, I think this is always worth checking out. I know over time sort of opinions have somewhat waned about it, and it gets a lot of criticism because of the sort of graininess and the poor audio. But when I first saw this early on video home release, around about 83 actually, I loved it, and there's a part in the performance, I think it's got the track listing here. Funnily enough, Moonage Daydream, the version of Moonage Daydream on here is just one of my all-time favourite sort of versions of a song. The solo on it is just amazing. And of course, at that point, Mick Ronson was in the band. I mean, all of, the musicians Bowie's worked with over the years have been excellent, but I particularly enjoyed this particular lineup and the rendition on there of Moonage Daydream. Yeah, that's just really good. The extended solo on that is awesome. But yeah, well worth checking out if you've not seen this already, and just getting a bit of a feel for what was going on at that time. I noticed Vogue did a 15 best David Bowie books. So again, if you're looking for a bit more of a coherent, I don't know really what the best choice of words here, but yeah, just you're more into that sort of timeline period, or there's a particular period of Bowie you enjoy. I thought this list was really interesting. Now, one of my favourite books that we have in the house that I bought, I probably got it a digital copy as well, is this one, The Complete David Bowie. It was revised and updated in 2016. I'm not sure when my copy is. It might be just before this. So it's only going to be as accurate as the time when it came out. Now you can see here it came out just after around his death. So yeah, it would include that. But it does go through fairly methodically about albums, songs, tours, his acting career, and various other things. It's 800 pages. It's pretty thick. The Kindle edition's pretty reasonable. And then this one's really interesting. I picked this up. So if this came out in 2014, I picked this up. I don't know if it was the last time I was in the UK. It might be the time before, at a bookshop. And this is really interesting. So this is his Berlin period. It's pretty dark, obviously, but it's another one well worth sort of tracking down and having a read about the Berlin years, and Eno and Iggy Pop. And his return to painting, days cycling to the museum, and exploring the city's nightlife. So yeah, really interesting period in his life. I find musically, I naturally gravitate in my sort of musical appreciation in terms of to the point of obsession with the period in music, particularly as it was reflected in the UK charts, from a period of about 1976 through to, I would say, maybe 79, even possibly into 80. Even as I was 81, but yeah, certainly the tail end of the 70s, from 76 onwards, in terms of the sort of music that's being played, and something to watch out for in some upcoming music episodes at the weekend, where I specifically look at certain albums and certain singles and stuff that was released by a number of different artists. I've perfected some code, and I have some new spreadsheets I've worked on since I did an episode about my happy memories of the UK singles charts rundown. I now have a means of pulling down data from the website and presenting it in pivot tables in Excel. So that's something I want to run with and look at certain periods in music history from a sort of UK lens, particularly through the medium of the singles charts. through the lens of the singles charts, and yeah, I think that's going to take me down some interesting rabbit holes in terms of looking, you know, what was popular and what sort of got pushed to the back, or what, as a result of it being, me being super aware of, I then became locked into that period somewhat, and other tracks that I remember in a particular period in terms of when a certain single was released that I like I thought of one the other day. I can remember around the time of Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, and some of the singles off of that album, and what those singles coincided with in the UK charts. So it's quite possible there may be another Bowie themed episode for my music episode of Seeds of Flourishing the weekend. So thanks for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next video.